And so to America, where you think we've got a bit of a Hobson's choice in our looming election. Spare a thought for the Americans. Any attempts or hopes that Joe Biden would prove himself up to the task of running for what is, of course, arguably the most important job on the planet, I think left the building last night when his fragility, his simple air of fatigue and confusion became absolutely unignorable. The problem is that, of course, Donald Trump lied and lied and lied again. The adjudicated rapist and convicted criminal Donald Trump, who, of course, set a mob upon the seat of democracy in America itself with a bloodlust for his own vice president, and who continues to lie about the result of that election, it is somehow being overshadowed by the fragility of Joe Biden. But the somehow in that sentence isn't doing the work that you might expect it to be doing. It reached a point last night, I think, where the somehow became answerable. How is the fragility of Joe Biden overshadowing the obvious and catalogued corruption, moral, criminal, you name it, of Donald Trump? And the answer is because it's so great now, that the fragility is so clear. I don't know how much of it is also based on the fact that everybody knows how disgusting Donald Trump is. That's not an opinion, by the way. That's just fact. The Grimace clip, I think, that didn't get the coverage it deserves, or at least there's so much grossness out there that it's really, really hard to keep track of it. One of the worst things or interventions that I've heard him say involved his backstage trips at the Miss Universe pageant, where because he owned the franchise, he had access to the changing rooms where young girls would be getting changed. And I don't know if you've ever come across these comments about that, but they were, anyway, everyone knows how disgusting he is. So, and of course, as we were discussing in the first hour, some people are drawn to the disgustingness for reasons that will always remain slightly impenetrable to the rest of us. But everybody knows how disgusting Donald Trump is. So when Donald Trump stands up and is disgusting, it's a little bit dog bites man now, isn't it? It shouldn't be. It should never have been allowed to come to this. I haven't got the first idea how you could stop it, but it shouldn't have been allowed to come to this. But it has. So Donald Trump publicly lying, doing disgusting things, saying disgusting things, lying through his teeth, dog bites man. Joe Biden standing up and appearing on occasions to be almost oblivious of what he was supposed to be saying, that's man bites dog. The President of the United States of America struggling to maintain focus for, what was it, a 75-minute conversation, just over an hour, I think, maybe 90 minutes at the outside, doesn't really matter. And there's a problem here. I'll read this quickly because I haven't watched the whole thing, and this caller did. Please watch it in full before you let the media sway your opinion. Look at how Joe Biden dealt with the D-Day part and where he told Trump you have the morals of an alley cat in regards to the Stormy Daniels situation. I could list more, but all I can say is that the media over there is as reliable as the media over here. His age is really telling, and it's clear he is exhausted easily, but in his worst moment, he is better than his crooked opponent. I don't disagree with anything you said. I don't need to watch the whole thing. In some ways, you're picking up on the dog bites man, man bites dog bit of it. Of course he has the morals of an alley cat, but we all know that. You know, a court found his conduct in the Stormy Daniels case to be criminal. We all know that. Donald Trump stands up and is disgusting. It's dog bites man. The problem with the debate about immigration on both sides of the Atlantic is that the people who claim that they are most concerned about it are the people most drawn to the lies of political leaders. You need to define exactly what a problem is, whether or not there is a problem, and what the so-called solution to the problem will achieve in order to have an informed conversation. Or you just have to find a way of dealing with a demagogue. Anyway, this is the immigration element of last night's CNN presidential debate.
And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
And then finally, both of them were asked during the CNN presidential debate about concerns regarding their own age.
I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent.
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one.
And you remember the Trump comments about the cognitive test? Is that the one where he went door camera or something like that? I mean, to be losing to Trump on that front is disastrous. And then for reasons I'm not entirely clear about, they decided to talk about, well, they ended up talking about golf.
I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6.
That's the biggest lie, that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I had, how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
What? So for many people listening, that will be the first time you've heard the clips. And I think that the message I got telling me to listen to the whole debate as opposed to the clips, although coming from a good place, I suspect that that's it, isn't it? I mean, when is the election? November. So July, it's the best part of 6 months still to go. I wasn't quite sure how to do this conversation. I'm still not, to be honest with you. We've spent so much time together over the years. Sometimes I just know something's important enough for me to throw it up in the air, and then we'll work out how we're going to talk about it. It was cameraman, woman, TV, that's right. I was drawn to the idea of telling someone you love that they have to stop doing something they love. I don't know why I was drawn to that. We had some incredible conversations not long ago, a couple of years ago, about telling your dad or your mum that they can't drive anymore, for example, telling them that you had to take the keys away because they were just not safe, even though they couldn't see it themselves. I don't know that that's appropriate. I feel we should be actually dealing with the specifics of the situation. But what are the specifics of the situation? It's not to do with the number. It's not to do with age. I think Bernie Sanders is even older than Joe Biden, isn't he? I had the pleasure of sitting down with Bernie not long ago, and he is as sharp as the proverbial tack. He'd run rings around any of them. So it's not that. I don't think he can run as president, or I don't think he can beat Donald Trump if he behaves like that for the next 6 months, or if that. I mean, what do? Stick him in a box? You know, back in the day, didn't they manage to keep FDR's disability secret? Was it a consequence of polio? Had he had polio as a child, Franklin Delano Roosevelt? I've seen his car, would you believe, and it had a machine in it because he could only drive one-handed, but he was also a chain smoker. So he sort of had a machine that would roll him a cigarette while he was driving his car one-handed. But they managed his media appearances so successfully and so carefully that the vast majority of the American public had no idea that he carried a disability as a consequence of having polio as a child. You couldn't do that with Biden, could you? You couldn't just keep him away from the public. So we may get on. I'm sad, not disappointed. I'm not disappointed in Biden. You can't help getting old. I'm sad in the sense that I don't want a rapist liar, a fascist rapist to be president of the United States of America. I don't think that's a particularly controversial position, although I'm sure that Johnny Bunch of numbers will be outraged at the description of their hero as, well, he is an adjudicated rapist. He is a convicted criminal. He is somebody proven to have lied about almost everything and to have unleashed a murderous mob on his own vice president, effectively. But some people still like it. So that's why it's terrible that Joe Biden doesn't appear up to the job. I am still a little bit drawn to the idea of how do you if you're Joe Biden's mate, if you're Barack Obama, if you're Jill Biden, although some of the analysis I've read suggests that it's her deep love of being first lady that partly informs Biden's determination to hang on. That's probably gossip. How do you have that conversation? What do you do? How do you do it? How do you say? Can't do it. You can't do it, Dad. You can't do it. darling. You can't do it. I don't know how you do that. So we may do that together. But what we'll do first, 0345 6060 973. What we'll do first is ask how this happened. I didn't watch the debate the other day on the telly, the one that Michelle Hussein did. I saw bits of it. She's just brilliant. I could watch her all day, but I was doing something else. I can't remember what, but I'm sure it was very important. But all of the weirdos were jumping up and down about some bloke who stood up and accused them both of being awful. He was like your Uncle Keith's Facebook page made flesh. You know exactly that kind of character. It's the kind of people leave the pub when he comes in. But for reasons I'm not entirely clear about, I think it had something to do with the fact that pollsters chose the question rather than actual journalists or producers. So he stands up and says, is this really the best that the country has to offer? And you're looking at Starmer and Sunak, and all the bozos in the audience start clapping. Absolutely ridiculous. But in America, they'd have a point, wouldn't they? You watch that debate. You watch a good man who's clearly not up to it anymore, and a very bad man who in many ways needs to become president in order to exonerate himself of all the crimes that he's committed. And how the hell has America ended up with that choice?